Hello and welcome back to The Note. Today I'm going to be talking to a man who is most famous for coining the term emerging markets. Turned out to be rather a big innovation for the IFC many decades ago now. Fascinatingly, he now has a new book suggesting that the action is no longer with the emerging markets but with the rust belts of the developed world, which he is suggesting are going to turn into the brain belts. So let's now discuss this with Antoine van Agtmael. Antoine.
Great to be here.
Thanks very much for joining me. Why do you see a move back to the rust belts? What is going on there? What is the new driver of competition?
I believe that now things are changing. The paradigm is changing. And what is important for the next 25 years is not how much you can make things cheaply en masse,
right,
but how smart you can make things. And when it comes to making things smart, the old economies, the United States, and by the way also Northern Europe, are actually quite well positioned.
Okay, but what's fascinating is the places you've found where the smartness is going on most impressively are places like Akron, Ohio, Albany, New York, Eindhoven in the Netherlands. Why are we seeing growth in places like that? What we think of them as rust belts. We've got all this anger on the campaign trail in the US about what's going on there.
Let's take Akron as an example. Akron, Ohio. The 4 big tire companies were there. Was the tire capital of the world. It went into a major decline. But what stayed, and that's what people forgot about, what stayed was the really world-class research on polymers. So it became a center for ideas, new ideas, on new materials. And so it is these smart new materials that are going to be important. And what do you have today? Over 1,000 little polymer companies that employ more people than the 4 old tire companies.
Does that mean we're now in a secular decline, that we should be getting out of the emerging markets? Or what should the emerging markets be doing to fight back?
John, you know that the best opportunities are always when things look terrible. And they certainly look terrible at the moment.
Right.
But there is an element, and I'm not concerned about, let's say, growth slowing in China. By the way, if you look back at the old BRICS report, that is the growth rate that they forecasted for today.
Right.
So that's not a surprise. It's not the exchange rate that is a surprise. What is, I think, a secular problem is the fact that China has lost its monopoly as the global manufacturing center.
Right.
Why? Because it's shifting from cheap to smart. And other countries are doing it, and some of it is not coming back to the US, but we are kind of reinventing how to do things in a smarter way. Who would have thought that we would have a new car company in the US?
Right.
And it's the future, I believe, is all about connecting and connectors. And you know, take the Tesla as an example, which has this tiny little connector, which is a chip, the sensor, and that makes it possible to be a self-driving car, produced robotically, with new materials, with a new engine. That's the kind of thing, that's a smart car. And you can talk about a smartphone, a smart grid, smart wearables, all of these things that are being invented here.
Okay, Antoine. Antoine, thank you very much indeed. There is very much more to discuss on this. It's pretty much all in this book. To conclude, first of all, plainly, counsels of despair for the US and Northern Europe are perhaps rather overdone when it comes to emerging markets. There will always be value there for those who look for it. There will always be opportunity. But for the next generation, it looks as though things are going to be harder in the emerging markets than they were in the last generation.